I do this for a living and I'm still working on my own nutrition things. Like, it's not like just because I know what I'm doing doesn't mean I nail it every single day with my nutrition. We're all human, and you have to think of like, what can I start working on now? And then where do I want to be?
That was Alex Larson today on the Running Effect podcast. I'm your host, Dominic Schlueter. I'll keep this intro short and sweet so that you can get into the substance of this conversation and hopefully find value from it that you can apply directly into your running and into your life today. By the end of today, after you listen to this conversation, Alex is a registered dietitian. She is incredibly accomplished, and her team have served over 500 different people. She is incredibly wise, incredibly gifted in the topic of nutrition and fueling. And we go in depth into those subjects in today's episode. We talk about the biggest ways that you can maximize your nutrition and your fueling to hit your goals sooner and faster and become a better athlete, become a more nourished, healthy version of yourself. If you enjoy this one, share it with a friend, a family member, a teammate, someone who you think would find value and benefit from it. I would also appreciate if you hit the follow button or subscribe button wherever you're listening so you never miss another episode. And the cherry on top, give us a 5-star review. It would mean a lot. Without further ado, enjoy this conversation with the one and only Alex Larson. Alex Larson, welcome to the Running Effect podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
We'll just throw yourself into the deep end here. And I think this is like a good anchor to just go off some deep rabbit holes. First question for you off the top of my head. What is the number one thing people should be doing that most aren't to maximize their nutrition?
Oh man, that I could think of a million things here, but the number one thing I see most common with endurance athletes as a dietitian is usually some sort of underfueling, whether that's underfueling in their just day-to-day eating, or they're underfueling their workouts themselves, or both. Sometimes that will happen too. And just not, I think they underestimate how much energy goes into not only performing well in their training and in their races, but also recovering from said workout or race, and then being able to bounce back efficiently so that they're ready to go for the next run or bike or swim or whatever they're doing. So that, I think, is probably the most common thing that I see. I know that's kind of an all-encompassing answer, but it's pretty relevant in terms of all the athletes that I've seen. There's always some sort of gap that we need to start filling in.
What do you think is the reason behind that? Do you think it's body image and like thinking that you'll gain weight if you eat too much? Do you think it's simply ignorance of not knowing that you're supposed to eat more? Do you think it's your gut not being trained well enough to like be hungry enough? What do you think is the main reason? I'm sure it's like individualistic depending on the person, but generally.
Yeah, I mean, with anything with nutrition is highly individualized, but the theme that I tend to see is either people just don't know, like they just think like, well, I'm not exercising that much, I don't need to eat that much. But we do live in a society where diet culture is pretty rampant, and so I tend to see people trying to restrict. I think they have concerns about, oh, I'm eating all of this sugar, I could gain all of this weight. We are in this society where we think that we need to eat less and exercise more in order to be this smaller size, and the only way to get faster as a runner is to be a smaller size. And so there's this lot of messaging that our brains have been conditioned to think. So for me, it's all about offering clarity and really simplifying nutrition for endurance athletes so that they can feel confident in their food choices and feel like at the end of the day they ate enough and they feel really great.
Do you think we're overcomplicating nutrition, specifically as runners?
Absolutely. Yeah. And social media has a big role to play in that. We're just bombarded with all sorts of noise of eating, all sorts of random, like putting beef tallow on our face and like drinking a gallon of water every day, like the most ridiculous advice. And it gets really confusing. And so to me, I'm like, this is just food. Like this is, yes, a science, but we need to first make things very simple so that it feels doable for people. It feels very achievable. And then let's build up that knowledge and understanding, but also personalize it to the person. Because I think when you like listen to a podcast or read a book on endurance nutrition, what's hard is translating it to yourself. because everyone's lifestyle is so different. Their schedule is different. Maybe they travel for work. Maybe I've got 3 kids. It's hard to fuel myself as an athlete and also feed my kids and fit it all into my busy schedule. And so working that into your lifestyle, I think, is the biggest challenge for people.
Blocking out all of the noise, and if you're a listener, forget anything you've ever heard about nutrition before. What are the key fundamentals that someone listening today should be focused on, and where should their attention be going towards in terms of the subject of nutrition and how they fuel themselves?
Yeah, a couple of main things that I tend to start with is front loading nutrition, especially earlier on in the day. Especially like breakfast is one of my favorite meals of the day. I think it's a very magical meal that can really set you up for success for the rest of the day. So especially if you work out in the morning, that breakfast is going to be right after that morning run. We need to use that opportunity to start refueling your body. And it also allows you to not go in a huge deficit the rest of the day. If you're someone that experiences a lot of uncontrolled hunger or like sweets cravings later on in the afternoon and the evening, I find that front loading that nutrition, having more early on in the day, really helps you stay on top of things so that you're not having that battling with your willpower and hunger later on. And then also protein. Protein's really great for recovery. I tend to see a lot of people that just don't quite get enough. And so if we can spread it out throughout the day to really support rebuilding, repairing your muscle, helps you just feel less fatigue in your day-to-day training. It also helps regulate appetite as well. So those are probably the 2 most common areas that I help athletes with, just filling in those gaps, and also work on timing, making sure you're getting enough during the day. Because during the day is when we're usually most busiest. So eating tends to get put to the side, and we need to really prioritize making sure we're getting enough so that you're not trying to like fill in everything all in the evening when you're more relaxed and having a tendency to probably overeat and not make the best food choices.
You opened up your response there talking about breakfast.
Mm.
And I think something I hear in society and in running is people will be like, I don't have an appetite in the morning. It's generally my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure there's a lot more science behind this. It's just because they've never really done it, so their body's used to it, and it's like training a muscle. You just gotta like incorporate it slowly. But what would you say to people out there who really struggle to eat breakfast or eat before a run? And what is the importance of fueling yourself going into your runs? Because to that diet culture, I think a lot of people we see like, oh, we fast for 12 hours, like it's like so good for XYZ fat liver. It's like you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I will even say for myself, if I wake up at 5 a.m. to go for a morning run, I'm not super hungry. I'm not wild about like eating something. So I usually will reach for something that's very simple that even though I'm not hungry, I can still get down. Usually it's some applesauce, or maybe I'll drink my carbs in like some sort of sports drink. That way it's hydrating me and getting me a good source of carbs. Um, that's where I usually start, is like anything that sounds appetizing to people and is going to be easy to digest, especially for runners, would be where I would start. And then after you get done with that morning workout, making sure you're having a good breakfast with, again, carbs to reload glycogen stores in your muscles, and then some protein to help rebuild and repair that muscle and help and curb that appetite for the rest of the morning. That's where I would start in terms of like a morning routine if you're doing that morning workout. If you're not working out that morning, then I would just wake up and try to have a breakfast. If you're someone that's I have had quite a few athletes that are like, I just don't eat breakfast. And I'm like, well, you're going to learn to like it. And a couple things that I notice is if there's someone that gets the majority of their calories in the evening, then of course you're not going to be super hungry in the morning because you had such a large amount to eat the night before. So that's why we rework where we get all of that nutrition to more earlier on in the day. Then you don't tend to overeat at night, and then you actually wake up hungry in the morning. That's kind of an interesting thing that I notice from people. And then also, like you said, it's reworking kind of that metabolism. Your body starts getting used to having nutrition during the day. So then people are like, oh my gosh, I actually woke up hungry and ready for breakfast. I was like, yeah, you're going to notice that now, that you are going to get pretty hangry if you don't stay on this schedule. So it's interesting how even after a couple of weeks that your body can really rework that.
How often do you talk about with your clients like nutrition as kind of a form of training? Because you mentioned the specific clients who are like, oh, I don't eat breakfast. And my first thought was like, well, how bad do you want to be good? Because you're going to be better if you eat breakfast or something before your runs. I think a lot of times us as runners, like we don't view these things with the importance that we should, and we overemphasize other things that aren't as important. Like if you're way overly specific about what shoes you need to wear for an easy run, but not about fueling yourself before you run, your priority is probably in the wrong spot.
I would agree with that. I think we really need to focus on the basics first before we get into the fancy equipment and forking over, $250 for some carbon plated shoes for a race. Um, I think that nutrition can be hands down your very best training partner. I think that you have to think of those carbohydrates as energy for your body. It's not like it's getting stored as body fat, it is going straight to your muscles and it's getting used as energy for you to feel strong in your workouts. In the marathon is a great example. Most people, the wheels will fall off in the final 10K. That's when most people will hit a wall at some point in that final 10K. And carb loading in advance, taking plenty of carbs earlier on in your race to spare that muscle glycogen so that you actually have strong legs in that final 10K and start passing people. And that's where the PRs happen. So you have to think of your nutrition as an ally, something that's going to really support you, versus being fearful of it as something that's going to potentially hold you back and cause you to like gain weight. Like you have to really think of it as a fuel source.
In terms of the macronutrients, how would you break those down in terms of, again, if I'm wrong on any of this, please butt in and interrupt and say I'm wrong. But like, I'm assuming carbs are more important before training, before a run to fuel those runs, whereas protein is probably more important afterward to help
Yes.
with recovery. If you're having a pound of steak before your run, your stomach's probably going to be pretty screwed up, right? But post
Yes.
run, you want that protein, maybe not a pound of steak. But yeah, what's your thought on like when you should incorporate different macronutrients?
Yep. So protein and fat and fiber are the things that are going to slow down digestion. So it really has to do with timing. So if you're going to have a meal that's going to have some protein in there or a little bit of fat, you want to give yourself enough time for that to digest and empty from your stomach, especially if you're a runner, because that jostling motion can really cause an upset stomach and the GI issues that have to often happen with runners. So it all has to do with timing. So if you're going to have a pretty hearty meal, you want to allow, I'd say 2, 3, 4 hours for that to digest. So not having steak and eggs as your pre-run breakfast in the morning would not be the best idea. Even I would skip the protein shake for sure. I would focus on just those carbs to fuel the workout, and then post-run you would be focusing on getting protein, reloading with some carbs. I think carbs are still great the rest of the day. We need to make sure we're still providing our body with that energy, but you need to make sure you're getting enough before as well. But yeah, that's where honing in on macronutrients in terms of timing before that workout, and then the rest of the day having that consistent supply of nutrition to keep your body recovering, recovering and bouncing back from workouts very efficiently, effectively, is where we tend to see the biggest fitness gains, because it's not just about nailing your workout, it's about bouncing back from it so you're strong and ready to go for the next workout. If you're finding you're having to take an extra rest day, or you're failing workouts, you're not able to finish maybe all of the intervals in a workout, that's where we can look at nutrition to maximize that and really see people get faster and stronger.
If I'm not mistaken, you and your team, you have a bunch of dietitian and nutrition coaches who work for you, which is awesome to see
Yes.
a
Yeah,
business,
I,
because
I
I think
honestly hit the lottery twice with both Hannah and Mary on my team. They're incredible.
I love it. I know, or I'm reading here that you guys have coached over 500 athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, what are the attributes of the athletes who like get it and do really well and improve in their running as a result of focusing on nutrition? And what are attributes of athletes who don't get it and don't achieve what they want to?
Yeah, I think it has to do with mindset. When they come, we have a one-on-one coaching program. So when they come in and they are in this mindset of like, okay, I'm really going to put in the work here. Like you just have to be kind of ready to make changes with your nutrition, because it's not easy to do that. It can be kind of scary. it can be a lot of uncertainty. And so for us, we want to really provide that accountability and support to make it as seamless as possible. If there are ways that we can press the easy button as many times with your nutrition, we're going to do that so that you feel like you can build a nice foundation and have the skills and tools and knowledge to do that beyond our program. And so mindset, I think, is really important. Coming in ready to put in the work, because if you don't put in the work, you're not going to see the results. I have to tell myself that as an athlete. I'm like, okay, if I want to do well in this upcoming race, I have to be really consistent with my training. I need to make sure I'm on top of my nutrition and put in that work in order to see the results. And that's the same with our athletes coming in. The other thing is communication. We can provide feedback and advice, but you also have to take that and then report back to us what's working, what's not, because we have so many different tools in our tool belt, but we're not going to hand over all of them. We're going to start with some of the low-hanging fruit, easy things to do, and then build from there. And your feedback helps guide us to helping you get you to where you need to be.
How would you say individualism, such a big word there, contributes to what you eat, how much you eat? And do you think as a culture, it's a problem, the extent to which it's just like a cookie cutter, one size fits all, when in reality, we are each very complex and unique?
Yeah, I think for us, when we calculate nutrition needs, we take into account, height, weight, age, body composition, training, volume, goals. We'll look at health history. We look at all those different facets of an individual and start putting together a plan of how we want to adjust their nutrition. So, for example, like protein recommendations are anywhere from 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And so depending on someone's height and weight, that's really going to vary in that individual's needs. And so we need to really hone in on, okay, where are you at right now with your protein? Here's the range that we're looking at. Like, let's maybe just look at in the middle, 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. How much of gap do we have? How easy is it for you to fill in that gap to get you to where we need it to be? If it's really difficult for you, even with maybe using a scoop of protein powder once a day, then we can maybe try 1.5 to 1.6. And if that's something that you can be consistent at, great. Let's focus in on that and consider that a win versus trying to be 1.8 and 2 and failing all the time and being really inconsistent with your nutrition.
Fascinating. So would you say consistency is the king? Like,
consistency is king. Yes. Let's figure out something that you can do long term, because that is where people are going to see the best results versus seeing your nutrition all over the place throughout the week, the month. It's really hard for your body to get in a good spot and see results.
Do you think athletes focus on doing too much too soon? Because I think that initial, you're completely shifting all 3 meals and how much you're eating and what you're eating. You're setting yourself up for failure. I'm sure there are examples of people who are just almost unhealthily type A that they can pull it off. But most people would probably find it hard to actually consistently nail something that's a complete reversion of what they were just doing.
I would agree with that. I find that those really prescriptive diets tend to fail pretty commonly for people because it's just human nature for us to resist change. And so then when we make this big change with our nutrition, our bodies it might be able to handle it for a week or two, but eventually it's going to be like, oh no, we're going to rebel, and it's going to be really difficult to stay with it. So for us, we don't revamp everything overnight. We start with that low-hanging fruit, some of the simplest, easiest changes that we are going to do that are going to make the biggest difference in them having better energy, better training results, feeling like their hunger is more regulated, and then slowly, progressively, step by step, adding in new elements so that it doesn't feel overwhelming, it doesn't feel complicated, and that by the time they get to their goal, they're like, oh, that wasn't too bad. It took a lot longer. They have to be very patient and trust the process, but there wasn't this roller coaster of, on the wagon, off the wagon, on the way. That's where I find it works much better. And we're working with human psychology in that.
Right. What are your thoughts on supplements? I think they're all the rage these days. Which ones do you trust? Which ones do you use? Which ones do you think are just magic fairy dust that has good marketing behind it, but doesn't really do much?
Yeah, I think a supplement is just what it is. It should supplement your diet. And so, first and foremost, I think we need to build that foundation with someone's nutrition and then find, okay, what areas are we just struggling with to get enough of, and where can we fill in those gaps with a supplement? For me personally, I do use a protein powder. I usually just will use 1 scoop most days of the week. It's just helpful for me to just bump that protein up a little bit for me. It's also very convenient. I use Thorne products. I find that they're a very reputable, credible supplement company. A lot of their products are NSF certified for sport. And so, for a lot of pro athletes, athletes that are having testing done, you just have that nice third party testing, gives you some peace of mind and security. Also, their whey protein isolate powder, the chocolate, is the best tasting one I have ever found. It's so good. I mix it with some Fairlife chocolate milk, and if you blend it with ice, it tastes like a Wendy's Frosty, and I'm not even exaggerating. Like, it tastes exactly like that. It's like a dessert. So it's fun to have something that you're fueling yourself well with, and that also tastes really good. That's like the best of both worlds in my mind. I also, as of like 8-10 months ago, started doing creatine. um, it's probably one of the most well-researched supplements. I've been really pleased with how it's helped me bounce back. I've had my third baby 18 months ago, and so for me to come back into training, I just really needed to put my muscle mass back on, and so that's been really helpful for me. So I do use that. And then just a multivitamin is also not a bad thing to do as well. But it, again, it's really going to depend on the person. If they're someone that struggles with keeping a ferritin level at a good range with their iron stores, an iron supplement is definitely a good idea. I'm not always super great about taking mine, but I need to be better. I need to be on like an every other day plan. It's just hard to remember.
Especially when you're taking like 4 other supplements. I did the
I
same
know.
thing.
Well, and I need to take it in the evening versus the morning because it just upsets my stomach. And sometimes I just forget in the evening because I'm just like rushing to
Busy.
try and get to
Yeah.
bed. I like already struggle getting to bed on time. So yeah, with runners, making sure iron levels are looking good, and if not, doing some sort of iron supplement if you're not getting enough through diet can be really helpful, especially for runners. We see a lot of runners with a lower ferritin those iron storage levels, and it can be so helpful for your energy levels and athletic performance.
What do you think are the biggest things you see out there on social media or out in the world that are just like the biggest falsehoods that you think people buy into when it comes to nutrition?
mm, I mean, I think that green powders are kind of everywhere in the media right now. I'm not someone that promotes green powders, but if someone's taking it, I usually don't have an issue as long as they're NSF certified for sport or informed choice for sport. Um, Though I will say we did have someone that we knew that was started taking it, and he had some lab work done, and his liver enzymes were elevated, and that was kind of interesting because he stopped taking the green powders and his levels went back. So I was like, oh, that's kind of fascinating that had an impact
Mm-hmm.
on his liver. So I think with all of the hype about how great they are, I think that's a little over the top. But if you're someone that maybe trains a lot and is maybe missing out on some key nutrients just because of the volume of training you're doing every day, I could see using it during that period of time. Or if you're traveling and not eating your normal diet, but using it all year round as like a must have is not usually something that I would recommend.
What about electrolytes? What are your thoughts on that and just hydration in general?
I think that people need to pay more attention to their hydration, especially for runners, because they don't always take enough fluids with them during their runs, unless you're maybe a trail runner and you carry a hydration vest on you. But it's kind of frowned upon in like the marathon world to use a vest, which I think is really silly because dehydration can really take you out pretty easily, especially when the temps increase here and we get into the summer months. Uh, it's it's just as important as the fueling is in my mind. So With hydration and electrolytes, it's a very individualized thing because everyone has a little bit different sweat rate and everyone is going to lose electrolytes at a little bit different rate as well. I tend to be a very salty sweater. So I am always trying to make sure I have electrolytes with my fluids, especially if it was a hot workout. Learning your sweat rate, you can do a very simple sweat rate test where you would weigh yourself before you start your workout, try and work out at least an hour, drink a pre-measured amount of fluids during that workout, weigh yourself afterwards. I've got a calculator on my blog that you can just plug in those numbers and it'll give you like how much you're losing on average per hour of exercise. And then knowing that sweat rate, you can kind of figure out, okay, how much should I be drinking so that I don't get too dehydrated during my workouts and during my race. And then practicing that in your training so that when you get to race day, you can drink enough at your aid stations and not end up in the med tent at the end of your race. So putting in that little bit of homework can really make a huge difference in just how you feel during your training and in your race. And then aligning, making sure you're getting enough electrolytes so that you're not having that hyponatremia risk, that low sodium blood plasma levels, also can play a really big role because you almost can have similar bonking symptoms if you have that low sodium levels. It's pretty similar symptoms and it really can take you out of your race pretty quick.
What would you say to someone listening who's just like overwhelmed by the overcomplicated nature of nutrition?
Yeah. I would first say that, I'm going to say a lot of things here. So one is we're not shooting for perfection here. There's no perfect diet. There's no perfect fueling plan. It's a process. There's always things that we can be working on. I do this for a living and I'm still working on my own nutrition things. Like it's not like just because I know what I'm doing doesn't mean I nail it every single day with my nutrition. We're all human and you have to think of like, what can I start working on now? And then where do I want to be? Like if you have a marathon in 3 months and you know that you should be taking, let's say you want to aim for 70 grams of carb per hour during your marathon, but right now you're only taking about 40 per hour. Okay, now we have something to shoot for. Let's put together a plan of every long run. We're going to start working on increasing and building that gut tolerance and building those behaviors for you to easily take in that much on race day and feel really great. Same thing with hydration. If you know that you lose on average a liter of sweat an hour, we are looking at maybe trying to get in 1 24-ounce bottle per hour. Let's start with every 15 minutes, you're taking like 6 to 8 gulps of water. And then by the time you get to the aid station at the race, you can easily take that down and not have that sloshy feeling in your stomach and know that towards the end of your race, you're not going to be dehydrated and seeing performance decline. It's those little things that you can focus on and break it down that makes it feel more doable in your head. You don't have to do everything all at once. Pick some of the things you want to start with and then build from there.
What part of nutrition would you say fascinates you the most these days?
I would say I'm so excited to see what the research in the next 10 years comes out because I think back to, 2014, I did Ironman Wisconsin, and what we knew about sports nutrition then, like the recommendations were 30 to 60 grams of carb per hour for even something like an Ironman. And now we have athletes doing 90 grams plus an hour in ultra endurance events, which is really fascinating how we've come a long way. I anticipate seeing more on like a gut training protocols coming down the line. I think what's so fascinating is nutrition is an evolution. And so I'm always fascinated with how our carb recommendations have transformed in the past 10 years and then where we're going to go with them in the future.
How'd you get started in this? What's your journey? Take me through like the point where you were interested in nutrition all the way up to becoming a registered dietitian.
Well, I grew up with parents in the healthcare field. My mom was a peds nurse. My dad was a nurse anesthetist. And so medical jargon was very normal conversation at the dinner table. And so I knew I wanted to be something health related, but I'm really terrible with blood and needles. Like my mom was like, "You're kind of pathetic, Alex." I'm like, "Yes, I'm sorry." I like shun me as your daughter, but I knew I wanted to do something health related, and so she introduced me to the dietitian that worked at the hospital. I shadowed her, and that was like, okay, yeah, I could do this. Like I love food, I love cooking, I love baking. Let's become a dietitian. So I went to college. I got a dietetics degree. I became a dietitian 2010. I got my RD, and that was right around the time that I was getting into triathlons. And fast forward to, like I said, 2014, I did Ironman Wisconsin. Sports nutrition was never really on my radar as something I wanted to do in my career until the moment of that Ironman, when I witnessed a lot of people struggling with cramping and bonking and massive fatigue. There was lots of like people crying and sitting on the sidelines and vomiting all during this marathon of the Ironman. It was kind of a war zone. And when I finished, I crossed the finish line. It took me all day. I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, if I wasn't on top of my nutrition and if I didn't know what I was doing, I don't know if I would have gotten to the start line, much less the finish line. And that's where I started to feel my calling. And I launched Alex Larson Nutrition in 2018. So a few years later. And it's just been the best job ever. It's like, these are my people. Like they tell me they want to do an Ironman or they want to run 100 miles or they want to swim the English Channel. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. You tell me how far you want to go and I will help you fuel for it and help you feel your best, not only in your training, but also in your life, because it's not just about the training, it's also about being a productive human the rest of the day. And if you're doing your long run and then you're a zombie the rest of the day on the couch and you don't get to play with your kids, that sucks. So how can we make sure you feel your best in your performance, but also still be able to do everything else in life? That's my passion when working with athletes.
What's it been like turning this passion into a business, and how excited are you for the future? And what do you feel like is the future for Alex Larson Nutrition?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started it, it was a side hustle. I had a regular full-time job and I just did this for fun on the side. And then after COVID, so very early 2021, my full-time job was sucking my soul. And I just said, okay, I need to figure out how to make this business a go, something I could do full-time. And so it took me about 8 months before I quit my job. And then it was another 6 months until I was ready to hire another dietitian to help me, because my client load was so full. I didn't have time to really do much else. I was working as much as I could, considering I had 2 kids at that time. And so I brought on Hannah first. And then a few months later, Mary came on. Hannah has more of a triathlon background. Mary comes from a marathon running background. And honestly, we're just like such a tight knit little group. It's not just you work with one dietitian when you're in our one-on-one program, but you honestly get the brain power of all three of us, because we're always in a group chat talking about things, sharing new snacks that are coming out that would make great fuel options, like Pop-Tart bites or whatever it is. Like it's just a really fun atmosphere for me to have built not only a business that supports me and my family, but also supports 2 other people in their family too. So I just feel like this is just a dream. And I launched my own podcast in January. It's called Endurance Eats. So that's kind of what's new right now, is just building that audience and being able to serve this community that's incredible the best way that I can.
I love it. And congrats on all the work that went into it, because I know,
Thank
like,
you.
even when you talk about hiring someone, it's like you can say, oh, I hired someone, but like to get to that position financially, or to that means your business was big enough to merit it. Like, those are really big things. So congrats on it.
Yeah,
And
thank you. Yeah,
just
it was
from this
it was a lot of
conversation,
work. Like
well deserving.
entrepreneurship is hard. Like
Yeah, not for the
there's a
faint of
lot of
heart.
I mean, when I had that full-time job, I would work at it all day and then I would get the kids to bed and then I would work from about 8 p.m. to midnight for like 7, 8 months. It was wild. And then I still sometimes will work late in the evening because I got kids stuff going on during the day. It's definitely a juggle, but I wouldn't do anything else. This is just the best.
Totally. It wouldn't be meaningful if it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
If it was easy, it wouldn't be meaningful.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I love it.
everyone would do it if it was easy, but
Yeah,
it's
exactly. Exactly. Does that mean a lot to you, like thinking back to those days when you did have to stay up until midnight because it was a part-time job? Like, is it pretty cool to be sitting with me here at 2:45, probably 1:45 your time,
yeah.
and just being like, oh, I'm on a podcast talking about my full-time job, which is what I want to be doing.
I know, yeah. And like I have this, I mean, my office looks really nice in this video, but just so everyone knows, like it's kind of a shit show there everywhere else. Like I that's just kind of how life is where I'm always working on something and juggling something. I have a lot of bike equipment here because I've really recently got into gravel biking. So I just need to constantly work on organizing my schedule and life. But yeah, it's just the best. I love coming on podcasts like this and sharing, you know, my mission at Alex Larson Nutrition is to create a world of well-fueled athletes. So it's fun for me to just connect with people and make nutrition something that feels approachable.
Hmm. I love it. Well, Alex, final serious question for you. For those
Mm-hmm.
listening to our conversation today, and I know in the topic of nutrition, which is so complex, it might be hard to boil it down to one thing, but what's the final takeaway message that you want to leave with the audience today?
Make sure when you are reading or listening to nutrition information online to check the source, making sure it's coming from someone that's credible, someone that's been in that area. A dietitian is someone that has a lot of extensive training on just nutrition, and make sure that they vibe with you. You know, make sure that it's someone that you feel like that you can relate to and trust. And drown out all the other noise. Like make sure that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is, and that there's always a way to figure out with nutrition. There's always something we can work through and get you in a good spot.
Alex, final question for you. The question I ask every single guest on every single episode. If you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what would you personally choose to make for him?
That I would make for Gordon.
Yes, your
Mm,
Chef Alex in the kitchen.
oh my gosh. What would I make for Gordon Ramsay? I'd be so scared. Um, I would probably make pancakes. I make really good pancakes. So hopefully he's coming over in the morning
Or breakfast for
for
dinner works.
breakfast. Yeah, it took me 2 years to finalize my recipe. It is on my blog. It'd be pancakes. I make them every week on Friday evening for my kids for dinner so that I have some pancakes in the morning for my long workout.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
Alex, thank you so much for taking time out of your incredibly busy life and schedule and sharing so much nutrition and fueling wisdom with me and my audience. And really excited to follow along all that you're doing. And again, congrats on all of the things you've done and all the ways your hard work has taken you places. Keep crushing it.
Oh, thank you so much, Dominic.